Let me talk about how China looks at EU or Europe. China does not look at Europe as a competitor. Europe is not a rival. It's not an antagonist, and Europe definitely is not an enemy. We just look at Europe as Europe. It is a fact, it's a megatrend. China and Europe need to engage with each other on equal terms, respecting the differences between China and Europe. Now, while China looks at Europe purely from the Chinese perspective, we also understand that while we are talking about China-EU relations, Europe actually looks at China with a big overhang from EU-US relations. But allow me to mention one thing. Don't consider China-US relations are carved in stone. Look at what happened in San Francisco. The summit meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Biden of the United States is now described not on the sideline of the APEC. It's a separate, full-fledged summit meeting on the eve of the APEC meeting. That makes a lot of difference. When we move into the second 20-year period, my wish list for China-Europe cooperation for the coming 20 years is that, first of all, let's bring our bilateral trade to $1 trillion. Now, between China and the United States, they're actually talking preliminarily whether they should set a goal for breaking the $1 trillion trade value. Don't be surprised if it moves in that direction, and I hope Europe and China can get our acts together and set a goal so that we will try our best to increase our bilateral trade. And for the additional amount to be added to China-Europe trade, hopefully European companies will do better to contribute more, selling more goods to China so that China-Europe trade will eventually be more balanced. Now, secondly, I think China and European relations should actually depoliticize. I don't think it is a good thing to see so many geopolitical dimensions added to China-European relations. Let's just look at China-Europe as whatever it is, because the European people, the Chinese people, we want to get along with each other. China and Europe actually do not have any fundamental interests in conflict against each other. I think eventually between China and Europe, your God for you and my God for me. That gives me hope that between China and Europe, we can figure out a way to get along with each other, respecting our differences, and do what really matters most for the Chinese people and for the European people. That is to focus on trade, focus on economic relations. China can learn so much from many European countries. And I do hope European countries can also realize that China is a fact and is a megatrend. Now, 20 years from now, I truly believe what Elon Musk said will be true. Chinese economy will be doubling the size of the US economy, meaning the Chinese economy by then, around the middle of the century, will be same size, if not even larger than the combined US-EU markets. Don't be surprised if that happens. I hope Europe should really position yourself well in a timely manner to come to terms with the continued economic development. And I do hope when China continues to develop, Europe will be very much involved. We will be growing together as partners rather than as competitors or as antagonists, as rivals. Why rivals? Or even worse, as enemies. Thank you very much.
Gao, thank you very much. Highly provocative, very bold, a very clear statement of the prowess of China in the future. So it's like either get on the bus or be, or miss it to a certain extent. But no, I mean, it's important, and it goes back to the point that I think there's a consistent theme through this, is about that we need to be frank and enable the conditions to actually say some of the things you've said. The leaders need to have this kind of exchange, basically. And, your sense of my God is my God, your God is your God, and let us not try and preach to each other, is an interesting metaphor of how we might think about the relationship as we move ahead.
But when you talk about values, be very careful. You're talking about value to a civilization 5,000 years old. We are still here. We are still kicking. And therefore, China has a reason to stick with our own value. And when the Americans talk about their value to us, we keep chuckling, actually. So be very careful when you talk about value. Talk about value to the Muslims, to the Saudis. Be very, very careful to talk to value to the Africans, for example, especially from the European context of what you did to many African countries. Be very careful. So we should really focus on really what matters. That is growth, stability, promoting peace, really solving the burning issues for the people. Raise their living standards, build a better road, for example, in Brussels. And that's what really matters, really. And China can help, really. I'm not boasting. I was really shocked at the quality of the roads in Brussels. And I do personally want to help. But if you refuse Chinese help, be my guest. You know, the loss is not on China, it's on the Europeans. Therefore, let's forget about all these high-sounding words and ideology. And I remember what Deng Xiaoping said in 1947 when he gave a speech at the United Nations Extraordinary Conference. He was speaking to the United Nations delegates assembled in the hall. He said, "We will never seek hegemony. If China seeks hegemony," he is calling on everyone gathered in the hall at the United Nations. You need to unite with the Chinese people to overthrow the Chinese government. Can you believe it? I think Deng Xiaoping, for whom I interpreted for more than 20 times, spoke the truth on that moment. And that is still the guiding principle in China. China does not want to seek hegemony. If the United States is happy being the top dog in the world, let it be the top dog. China does not want to be the top dog. Therefore, I think by the end of the day, let's do what really matters. Let's help Europe, help Americans, help China, help with the global South to do what the people want. After all, the Chinese dream and the American dream at the personal level are more or less the same. Every one of us want to have a bigger house. We want to send the kids to a better school. Many of those schools are here in Europe, for example. And they probably want to drink better wine produced in France and chocolate produced in Belgium, you name it. And we do not need to really deprive the people of what really they want. They want to have a better living standard.